You're waiting. So it's all yours, Elizabeth.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, just a little thing that came up on the screen there saying that you had to agree to the meeting being recorded. Yes, Dr. Bird, the last time was here, talked to us about the sex lives of birds, which was really quite fascinating. And now, of course, tonight he's going to talk to us about his long-term quest, because he talked to us about the Canada jay as Canada's national bird when he gave us the last presentation more than 2 years ago. So it's obviously something that's been going on for quite some time. There's a pretty good biography that Audrey put in the newsletter, Dr. Bird, but it's quite long, so I'm not going to go through all of that. I'll just hit a few of the highlights. He's an emeritus professor of wildlife biology at McGill University. He's a past president of both the Raptor Research Foundation and the Society of Canadian Ornithologists, as well as an elected fellow of the American Ornithologists. Oh boy, he's the International Ornithological Union and the Royal Canadian Geographical Society. So he's got lots of credits here. And he served 6 years on the board of directors of Birds Canada. He's written many, many columns, books. He's co-authored books, he's edited books. And he's been the recipient of a number of awards and honors. But perhaps the most special is the Doris Spears Award, given to him by the Society of Canadian Ornithologists in 2013 for his outstanding lifetime contributions to Canadian ornithology. So he has lots of bona fides here. And I think the reason that Dr. Bird loves the Canada jay so much is because it is a really tough little bird that likes to stay here all year round. It actually breeds here and can hang in through the whole winter, which not too many of our birds do. But I'm going to let him talk to you about why he thinks the Canada jay should be our national bird and what his team is doing to try to make that happen. So over to you, Dr. Bird. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Now comes the hardest part of the evening, and that's getting my talk up on the screen. And this is where I'm always holding my breath now. So let's see here. You can't see that yet, right?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. I know I have to find share screen. Now, where the hell is that?
Should be a little green button down at the bottom of the screen with luck.
Okay, I found it, okay. Can you see that?
We can say we can see your screen. There we are.
You can see it?
Yep.
Okay, actually, I have two objectives tonight. The first is to convince you that Canada needs a national bird. And the second one, as Elizabeth pointed out, that it should be this bird that you're seeing on the screen, the Canada jay. And let's start with the first question. Why should we even have a national bird? Well, bird watching, as a lot of you know, is still one of the fastest growing hobbies in North America, and especially during the pandemic. Bird watching and bird feeding have really grown considerably, and there's all sorts of ways to measure that. And it's always been big bucks for our economy, everything from bird feeding to travel to places, to seabirds and binoculars and all that sort of thing. And the birds themselves are beneficial to us. They eat multitudinous pests of all kinds. They pollinate our plants and crops. They disperse seeds. Their eggs and their meat. I mean, even chickens are birds, you have to admit. They feed us, and their feathers keep us warm. They've actually helped humans win wars. They've provided stereotypes for planes and so on, plane design. They've acted as couriers in many cases in World War I and World War II. They've even been used as sentries to detect when the enemy is coming. And when I say that they're literally canaries in a coal mine, it is well known if you look down there in the second picture from the bottom, the left. They were always used in coal mines where they were taken down below in cages to detect gases that suddenly appear in the coal mine to give the the miners an early warning system. But you know, that early warning system is much more important now than that because it's global. I mean, basically it was the birds, particularly birds of prey and pelicans, for example, that showed us that DDT was not a great chemical. And even though they didn't ban it in 1972 because it caused thin eggshells in birds of prey, it was later found to be carcinogenic, and it's just not a safe chemical. And now, today, birds are warning us about climate change, climate warming, and there's all sorts of studies going on to show that the birds are being affected by it, and it all adds evidence that climate warming is indeed with us, and that we've got to do something about it. And then there's the intrinsic value of birds. I mean, how many writers and filmmakers, composers, astronauts, you'll see Mozart down below was inspired by the songs of a starling. How many of those were inspired by seeing birds fly or sing or do wonderful things? It's incredible. And I like to think that this is the way I kind of feel about birds. I'm sure that all of you that I'm talking to feel the same, that a world without birds, both biologically and emotionally diminished. If we lose our birds, we lose ourselves. And so let's look at the national bird status in the rest of the world. 195 countries, of those 106 have official birds, and there's 21 more that have unofficial ones, meaning that they were voted in some sort of contest or whatever, or declared by somebody, but the governments haven't ratified them yet. And every single state and provinces have an official bird. All of our territories and provinces have them. We have a national tree, which is the maple. We have a national mammal, which is the beaver. Two sports, lacrosse, a summer sport, and hockey, a winter sport. And we even have a horse. It's called a Canadian, but we don't have a bird. And I think that a national bird would help define us, who we are, just like our flag did. I'm going to give you a very good example. To the south of us, the bald eagle for the United States, often called the American eagle by many down there, was actually established as the symbolic bird for the Americans in 1789, a long time ago. And it is revered for its beauty and fierceness. I must add in here that I have seen bald eagles waiting in the Vancouver landfill site in the garbage with the gulls. I've seen as many as 1,500 eagles in there eating garbage and even carrying garbage bags up to their nests and so on. And I also know that they're great thieves, stealing fish from hardworking ospreys. But I'm not here to denigrate the bald eagle. I think it is an amazing bird. And if you go to the States, you'll see that it's the logo for the U.S. Postal Service. It's 1970. And there are flags and all sorts of other things with bald eagles all over the U.S., wherever you drive. And of course, if you watch the Indy 500 or the World Series, Super Bowl, and events like that, they have trained bald eagles that fly. And I want to just draw your attention to that bottom right-hand picture, and you'll see the bald eagle grabbing onto a quarterback named Tom Brady. So you sort of know who I was cheering for in the last Super Bowl. And it wasn't Tom. So to rectify this situation, but before I get into this, I must say that I was writing a column for the Montreal Gazette for about 28 years, 17 years was a weekly. And around 2009, I think it was, I wrote a column on what would be a good national bird for Canada. And so I went through the Birds of Canada book by Godfrey, was the only major book across Canada that was out that way, and went and looked for a number of features that I thought were important and came up with a certain bird. And what happened is in 2015, the Royal Canadian Geographical Society decided to create a dialogue among Canadians. It wasn't their goal, like some people think, to choose a national bird for Canada. What they wanted to do is just get people talking about it and say, what do you think it should be? And so they got things going. And not long after, as soon as I found out about this, I said, oh my God, is the gray jay, and you'll find out why that's erroneous now. Why, I wanted to be sure that bird was among the 40 candidates. The Royal Canadian Geographical Society did work with Birds Canada to come up with 40 candidates. It was unfortunate for two things, though. Is first of all, they didn't bring the federal government into it, which I wouldn't be giving this talk right now if they had. But hindsight's 2020. And secondly, if I'd been on the committee, I would have not wanted to have any birds already taken by provinces and territories, but I'll come back to that. And so I immediately galvanized myself into action and created Team Canada J. And I recruited people all across Canada. A lot of them were schoolmates or people in professors and so on. And basically, I wrote an essay on why the gray jay should be Canada's bird. And the gray jay was sort of nowhere in the top 10 when I wrote that essay. But when it got published, I think at the time it was 13 reasons why it was a great bird. And suddenly the gray jay became vaulted into third place, a solid third place, by the way, and never wavered from there. And I knew it wasn't going to overtake the common loon, but I thought we might take out the snowy owl, but more on them later. The biggest catch I got for Team Canada Jay was the man we all know and love, who's done so much for nature, is Robert Bateman. He did these wonderful paintings of the bird, and he had no problem at all endorsing this as the bird for Canada. And I'll come back to him near the end of my talk. And the other big names that I've got were John and Janet Foster. You may not all know them, but they're basically iconic Canadian wildlife filmmakers. They've done amazing things for wildlife in our country. And they were both in there, and I'll come back to them too. And then the contest, started getting some traction, but it got a lot of traction when the TV show, the comedy TV show for Canada, 22 Minutes, got a hold of the story. And Kathy Jones, of course, in her comedic style said, about the gray jay, I'm not a fan. There's hardly any meat on it. Now a loon, on the other hand, that's good eating. And that really got a lot of attention to the contest. And so now I'm going to go through why I think this bird is so ideally mentioned, or why it's so ideally suited to be our national bird. And the first thing is right away is location, location, location. If you look at this map, this range map of the Canada jay, well, formerly the gray jay, you'll see that it stretches from one coast to another coast to another coast in our country. Its range practically overlaps with our country's borders. There are some populations extending into Alaska, a little bit into the northeastern states, and down through the Rocky Mountains into the States. But by and large, this bird is mainly found in Canada. And secondly, it's a totally unique bird for Canada. It's not found in any other country in the world except the US, unlike the snowy owl, which came second in the contest, and the common loon, which came first. It's not an official bird for any other geographical entity. The common loon is Ontario's bird and Minnesota's bird. The snowy owl is Quebec's bird, and the black-capped chickadee, which came in fifth, is the official bird of New Brunswick, Maine, and Massachusetts. And so that was a very, very big thing right there. And when we decided to create choose a national flag for our country in 1975, we did not elevate the Ontario flag on the left, and we didn't elevate the flag on the right either, to choose something fresh and new, which is the one we're all so proud of and choke up when we hoist this over the Olympics or Canadian hockey championships and so on. Now, the name is also important. It was called the Canada jay for 200 years, and it was erroneously, and I underline that word, changed to the gray jay in 1957 by the American Ornithologists Union Checklist Committee. They're the ones that decide the names of the birds, the Latin names and the common names of all our birds for North America. And basically they lump together the Oregon jay and the Canada jay and basically call it the gray jay. And Dan Strickland, who is our basically our national expert on the species, had something to say about that. And there's a great article on Ontario birds that explains all of the arguments about that. And the bird is also called the whiskey jack. There are various spellings of it and so on. This is the one I chose to go with. It has absolutely nothing to do with the popular beverage, but more on that later on. The Latin name of the bird is Perissorius canadensis, and the French name is Messager du Canada, which is a composite of chickadee and jay. And I underline chickadee because I know there's some people that were sad that the chickadee didn't get the nod. but you're going to get a bit of a chickadee if we get this job done and so on. And this strange looking bird in this painting here is an illustration of a Canada jay from the Quebec City area. And it was used by Carl Linnaeus when he gave, basically, he's the one who gave all the scientific names to organisms all over the world. And he gave this particular species, its original scientific name was Corvus canadensis. So there's Canada written all over this bird. Now, this is the guy I was telling you about. This is Dan Strickland. And in that article, Ontario Birds, I mean, he went to a lot of trouble. He went to various record archives of the American Ornithologists Union to look at the minutes of when they made the decision to lump those two birds together to make the gray jay. And he found out that it was a mistake, that it should never have been done. They even contravened their own regulations when they did it. So he put together a proposal. I was on it along with Ryan Norris, the other guy who knows a lot about Canada jays in our country, and several other people, taxonomists. And the committee very quickly sought Dan's way and gave the bird back its name, Canada jay. It had nothing to do with it, we wanting it to be our national bird. It was all to do with basic biology and regulations. Dan actually believes that there may be one species of Canada jay in our country, but there's actually three morphs. There's the Canada jay, which is the most extensive one found on the mainland here in BC and up into Alaska and all the way over to Newfoundland. And then there's the Oregon jay, which is found down on the coast and on Vancouver Island, by the way. And then there's the Rocky Mountain jay. Dan has been studying these quite a lot, actually, with other people, taxonomists and so on. And he's actually thinking that there may be a time when the Canada jay may get split into one, possibly these three species. We'll see. The other thing about Canada jays is they really do embody the Canadian spirit. First of all, they're a member of the corvid or crow family. These are the jays, magpies, crows, and ravens. And in my books, I think they're the smartest birds on the planet, even smarter than the parrots. And I could argue with you that fairly successfully too. And their brain size to body size ratio of the Canada jay is similar to a dolphin or a chimpanzee, which are pretty smart critters, and almost the same as humans, just like those other animals. And so these are very smart birds. And next, this is a minor reason. It's actually not even part of my 18 reasons now of why this should be our national bird, but it's a totally monogamous species, unlike the vast majority of cheating, promiscuous birds. A lot of people don't know that many of our songbirds do cheat on one another. They're very promiscuous, but these guys don't. They not only are not cheating on one another, they stay together year-round in their territory, and they remain very close to one another all the time. They even perch together side by side while actually touching each other. And I can think of people that have been married for almost 50 years, like my wife and I, and we don't do that often enough. And then it's an extremely friendly bird. It's trusting, it's curious, and so on. Yes, I know they're coming down to get food, they're opportunistic and so on, but they will come down to you very trusting, and they're not shy to perch on your hand, your head, take a hand out or sit on your ski poles or whatever. They seem to be very comfortable around humans. And this next statement here is what the John and Janet Foster, who took that picture in the bottom left, they came up with this in a dedication by them in the book, which I'll tell you about later, is that the Canada jay, because it doesn't migrate and does like to be around humans, likely greeted countless numbers of First Nations folks, settlers, miners, loggers, and trappers sitting around their fires in the these are people in the building of our country long after all the other birds, including the common loons, and even in some cases snowy owls, have left for sunnier climes or warmer places. And here's just some pictures showing you the friendliness of this bird sitting on people's hands and so on. And you can see they don't have food in their hands necessarily. They're just comfortable around people. And my favorite one is the bottom left there, the look in that lady's face with her video camera with that bird on there, just about says it all. And here's the other thing, as Elizabeth pointed out, is that this bird is extremely hardy. It doesn't migrate south in the fall at all. It stays around the whole winter, and it's adapted not only to exist in our cold winters, but also breed in our harsh Canadian winters. It can incubate eggs at 30 below zero. That bird down below is sitting on eggs covered in snow. The picture was taken by Dan Strickland. And that is a tough bird. So far we're talking friendly, smart, and tough, which I think are three main features of Canadians. And they also have other adaptations to stay warm in our winters. They've got a lovely plumage. It's probably thicker in the wintertime, in the wintertime than in the summertime, because a lot of birds do grow extra feathers. And those plumages can be drawn down to cover their bare legs and also their toes. And they even have feather covering over their nares, also known as nostrils and so on, to keep the cold air from coming in. And this is not necessarily unique to them, but they can undergo hypothermia at night to save energy. They can actually lower their body temperatures and even their heart rate to save using up a lot of energy to keep warm. And they are known to sunbathe even on the coldest days, like that crazy Canadian down there in the middle. And the females do this lovely habit. They engage in this behavior called nest jabbing, where they plump the nest, they peck at it with their bills, and they keep it plumped up and cozy warm for the nestlings. They sometimes do that thousands of times a day. But the coolest thing in all about Canada jays is, and how smart they are, is they've got sticky saliva inside their mouths, and they take the various food items like fungi and berries and insects of various kinds and so on, and they use this sticky saliva to store the food under tree bark above the snow line. If they did what the blue jays do, which they bury them in the ground, it would be covered by snow and absolutely useless to them. And they're not only able to do this, but also remember their locations. And this is part of the reason why these birds do need cold Canadian winters to survive, is that they store that food so they have it when breeding season comes along. If it rots because of warming weather, then that's not good. And there are connections to the First Nations people. They do figure in First Nations folklore. That name Whiskey Jack, which I mentioned, has nothing to do with the beverage, actually was derived from a Cree word called whiskakak. Now, it's a bit controversial because Dan Strickland got together with Christian Artuso. A lot of you may know he works for the Canadian Wildlife Service, but he's really big on the derivation of names with First Nations and so on. And another expert, Professor D.E. Pentland, I think he's in Alberta or one of the Western provinces anyway. And this is where they think Whiskey Jack came from, not a variation on the name of Wisaka Jack, which means a benevolent trickster or cultural hero. So this is something new for you folks. I bet you didn't know. And Whiskey Jack is also one of the very few English vernacular names for a North American bird species borrowed from an indigenous language. And I don't know, Dan doesn't necessarily agree with me in this, but I did do a bit of reading. And according to some sources, the Canada jay is highly revered by First Nations as a good omen and a sentinel for danger in the forest. I can easily see the latter one and so on, because blue jays do the same thing by calling out to warn people when there's danger in the forest. And I'm pleased to say that I managed to find a First Nations person to be on Team Canada Jay. It was not easy because, you know, there are hundreds of tribes all across Canada, and it's hard to get them to agree on anything. And so, you know, the idea that some might say, oh yeah, the Canada Jay, that's great. Oh no, it should be the Raven, or no, it should be the mighty Golden Eagle or whatever. Anyway, Mark Najawan is a First Nations visual artist, and he did this painting, which one of my grad students bought a print for me. It's absolutely gorgeous, showing a Canada jay sitting on the shoulder of a chieftain. Beautiful painting. And this is a kind of a whimsical connection to religion. If you look at this mosaic, see the young lad at the top there, or a woman, I'm not sure what it is, that person is, sitting at the top right there, that is a mosaic tile floor that's found on a church, which I can't see here because well, I better not mess around with this. There's a church called something of Transfiguration. Unfortunately, there's a bar that's blocking it. And anyway, it's a Catholic church, and it was blessed by Pope John I and II back in looks like 19. I can't see the year there, but you can see it. And the artwork and the design for this mosaic was actually imagined by a fellow named Fabrizio Travisnuto and Helen Robin Barber. And the mosaic was actually installed by Travisnuto Mosaics. And the themes of it are, if we go back to it here, there's a militant sheep, the alpha and omega, the Celtic cross, our Lord's fish. And for Canadian content, Helen Rowland Barber contacted me and said, what do you think about the Canada jay? I don't know if she'd heard about our quest to make it our national bird or not, but she wanted to have that in there. And so if you look at it there, you can see it on the around 3 o'clock on that. And the picture, the mosaic was based on this lovely photo by Dan Strickland. And it's also a fairly safe choice for Canadians to make. It's not an endangered species, so it's not a high risk of disappearing. Could you imagine if we chose the whooping crane and then some terrible catastrophe happened and we got down to 10 birds or maybe none at all, and we've lost our national bird symbol? It's also not a hunted species. That's important to some people, and it's not going to be shot by Canadians for any reason. And I use the bufflehead here because it's another bird that is found in all provinces and territories. But I think some Canadians would probably take exception to having our national bird, especially one as cute as a bufflehead, being shot by hunters or anybody for that reason. And the other thing is, it's not regarded as an obnoxious or a nuisance species like the Canada goose, which actually came fourth after the Canada jay in the contest. It'll be over my dead body that the Canadian government will ratify the Canada goose as their national bird. Don't get me wrong, I like them. I teared up sometimes when I see them flying over in their skeins and honking and so on. But I also tear over with anger when I see them on a beach that I'm trying to have a swim at and they're defecating in the water. And I got E. coli one time from them at Elk Lake Beach in Vancouver Island, where I live. And so I will acknowledge this, that I went on the way here to Fernie, where I'm talking to you from. I stopped off at a campground in Manning Provincial Park. And I had a small problem in my car, so I found this family there. And lo and behold, there were some whiskey jacks or Canada jays right above in the trees coming down. And apparently they'd gone through an entire bag of dog kibble. They just love dog kibble. So if you're ever going up in a mountainous area like Mount Washington or whatever, or someplace like that, take a little thing of dog kibble with you. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later on. And so I have had people, the odd person, say, they can be obnoxious around picnic shelters and so on, but there's an easy way to get around that. Is just put signs up and tell people not to feed them. I know it doesn't always work, but it's certainly a way to get around that problem. And this is a cartoon, Tundra Comics, which is my favorite cartoon. It took the place of Gary Larson comics, which I use in my university lectures for a year. And I like this. Dan Strickland doesn't like it and made me actually take it out of the book, which I'll talk to you about shortly. And he doesn't like it because it's got gray jay in it for one thing, and I get that. He just doesn't like the bird being known as a cap robber because it's quite erroneous. They're not there stealing stuff like this guy's walking away with a guy's barbecue. And the thing that Dan really didn't like about this cartoon was that Chad Carpenter, the cartoonist, made the bird look like a chicken, and he didn't like that. So he just felt it was insulting to the bird, and that's his opinion. Now, I'm showing this bird here at this feeder because Canada jays will come to feeders in the backyard, just not everywhere. I'm not going to get them, for example, in Sydney, BC, but it's possible if one lived a little bit higher than my son's living here in Fernie, you could get them coming to a feeder here because they're all over the place here. I see them all the time up in Mount Fernie and even when I go up in the logging roads up in the top, they're all over the place. And the other reason I want to talk to you about this is that one of the criticisms I get of the Canada jay is, why couldn't we pick a bird that everybody gets to see in their backyards? Well, that may be true. Yes, we could pick the cardinal, but it's already the state bird 7 times over. We could pick the chickadee, but I've already told you that's taken. But think about all of those characteristics that I showed out to you. Could you find a bird that has all of those things and it's not taken already, and it's smart and friendly and tough and everything else? A lot of those birds migrate. I mean, if you can find one that beats this bird, then I'll be very surprised. And this is a poem that appears in the book by Colleen Rutherford Archer. The reason the book came about is that she wrote poems for all the territorial and provincial birds in our country, little ditties like this. And the last one is Canada jay, for the Canada jay, and I'll read it out to you. It says, "These smart birds found throughout the land will come and eat right from your hand. Sometimes called a campground robber, they cover food with preserving slobber and store as much as they can stash and dine in winter on their cash." I think it's very cute. The other thing too, you know, about them is that appearance is, they say appearance is everything. The thing about this bird is it's not flamboyant, its appearance. And I think personally that this best represents the conservative, understated nature of Canadians. With some exceptions, Don Cherry, for example, we are not a boisterous people. We are proud of our flag and so on, but we're not shoving it down everyone's throat. It's also a great bird for logo design. In fact, the Society of Canadian Ornithologists journal, Avian Conservation Ecology, has used it there. The only birds I think it could be confused with maybe might be the nutcracker, but they only come into BC in a very southern part, and they're not in a place where a lot of people are going to see them. And maybe the loggerhead shrike only because it's got the black and white, but again, the habitat is totally different. And the other thing too, I should point out is that I've had some people tell me, you know, I think the raven is a great bird. Hey, I like ravens. They're extremely smart birds. They're powerful and so on. And but they're already taken. They're actually one of the provincial birds. I think it might be the Yukon or the Northwest Territories, one of those two. Anyway, 99.5% of Canadians will not be able to tell the difference between a raven and a crow. And then you'll have all kinds of people pointing at crows and say, yeah, there's Canada's national bird. So I don't think that would work. And you have to admit, the bird is adorably cute. And yes, if you look in the fine print there, it says, I do know they eat eggs and nestlings. That's what jays and magpies and crows do. They are very opportunistic, but a lot of birds do that. And if they get a chance even, believe me. Now here is a very important value for this bird for Canadians. This bird is found mostly in the boreal forest ecological zone, which constitute a main part of our country, and we want to protect it. It's under a pressure from clear cutting and oil and gas development. So this would be a great poster child for our boreal forest. It's also common in our provincial and federal parks, not all of them, but a lot of the big ones. And so it becomes a great poster child for the parks as well. And I'll come back to that next thing shortly. It's also a terrific poster child for climate change. As I've told you, they need cold winter weather to keep their stored food from rotting. Now, getting up there, I'm going to come back to that business about why couldn't we pick a bird that you see in the backyard? Well, I think one of the values that this bird will have is if you want to see our national bird, you're going to have to get off your duff and away from Netflix and get out there and go hiking and skiing, take your kids and so on. I'll come back to that a little bit later on to meet this bird. And I guarantee it'll be the most photographed bird in the country by the time the dust settles once it's our bird. So in short, you could not find a more Canadian bird. It almost makes me cry that this has not been done yet. The final vote tally in that contest, by the way, was almost 14,000 votes for the common loon, almost 9,000 votes for the snowy owl, 7,900 votes roughly for the gray jay whiskey jack, 3,600 for the Canada goose, and roughly 3,300 for the black-capped chickadee. Now I've got asterisks beside the top three birds is because one of the reasons that the loon, I mean, obviously it's so popular, it's on our coins and so on, the loonie, and it is a great bird, there's no doubt about it. I grew up enjoying loons as a boy in Algonquin Park, but it's Ontario's bird. Could you imagine how unhappy Quebecers would be if we elevated Ontario's bird as a national bird and vice versa, for how unhappy Ontarians would be if we did the same thing with a snowy owl? And those two provinces, by the way, are our most populous provinces. And I suspect that the vote tally in the end was a lot of votes from those two provinces. So they were biased, I think, too. Now, the other thing I'll say here, the gray jay, if that bird had had its original name back, the Canada jay, I wouldn't be at all surprised it would be breathing down the neck of the common loon, certainly outstripping the snowy owl. And here's the bird that was chosen in the contest. They didn't go with the top two vote getters because those birds were already taken, they felt, and there just was enough evidence to indicate that the gray jay, now the Canada jay, was the best choice, and that's what they chose. And everybody thought, wow, this is going to be a done deal. I was thrilled that this bird got chosen and so on, as you can imagine. And I thought this is going to be an easy thing for the government to do, except this cartoon came out on November 18th, 2016, the year after the contest ended. And basically, and I can be crude here for a minute, the loon shit hit the fan. And basically, a lot of people felt that, wait a second, you didn't pick the bird with the most votes. That's very undemocratic. That is one reason why the government has not ratified this bird yet. Secondly, the government wasn't involved with the contest. They had nothing to do with it. And they do like to have their fingers in things. And so all of the loon people went crazy saying, hey, wait a second, our bird won the most votes and so on. I was on CBC with Terry Molesky. Mind you, I held my own pretty good, I thought, with the arguments that you've heard here. So here's what we need to do. We need to get the feds to buy in. Now, I thought when we had our 150th birthday in 2017 that it was going to happen then. No announcement. That led to a whole bunch more flurries from the media saying, okay, yeah, what about your bird? Why aren't they going to choose it? And then this didn't happen. And I didn't know at the time, by the way, about this government feeling. I was just, the people were getting letters saying we have no plans at this time to adopt any new national symbols. There were about 5 or 6 letters went out to various organizations and single people that wrote into their MPs. And we didn't really know, but after a little bit of digging and so on, I found out it was those things. No buy-in from the feds because they weren't involved and they didn't like the idea that was due democratic process wasn't followed. And then the International Ornithological Congress, we had thousands of ornithologists from all over the world in 2018 in Vancouver. And again, there were a lot of federal ministers there and so on, but it came and went, no announcement. And then we got the name changed back to Canada Jay a couple of years ago, and still no bites from the feds. And so what are we doing to make this happen? Well, first of all, we've got a website out now. It's very simple. All you have to do is type in CanadaJ, all one word, .org, and you'll get this website designed by my dear friend Joanna Socia, Island Gals, pro bono, by the way. It isn't finished yet. We have a lot of things to add, but there's lots of information on why we should have it. My essay on why we should have a national bird, and 17 reasons, now 18 reasons. The 18th is I think it's going to make people get outdoors and so on and be in good shape and so on. So you please visit that website, and there's a petition on there. It's just chugging along. We've got at least 15,000 people. We need a lot more than that to get the federal attention. And we are working on the French. We realize we want it to be fluently bilingual. Some of it is in French and English, and some of it's not yet there. And so this article came out, and a cover article for Canadian Geographic, basically introducing Canadians to our national birds. A lot of people think this is our national bird right now, but until the feds recognize it, I'm not going to rest. I'm going to keep doing this until the day they bury me, believe me. And there's a great article by Julia Zarenkin on the Canada Jay in there. And so the other tool in our kit box is we've got a book coming out called The Canada Jay, the National Bird of Canada, ? It's an 80-page book. It's done. It's finished. It's a gorgeous book. Robert Bateman wrote the foreword, and I'm on there with 7 other authors. We've all got short chapters, very easy to read, lots of pictures and paintings and so on. It's published by Hancock House in Surrey. I know David Hancock and Miles Lalonde very, very well, and they're actually doing it a pro bono. They're not making any money from it. They're not going to go in the hole either, we hope. But when the book's going to come out, we're still looking for a printing press. And in fact, when I get back from Fernie, we're going to have a bit of a meeting between Dan Strickland, myself, and Miles Lamont. I want this book personally to be sold for like $4.95. We don't want to make any money with it. We just want every Canadian to have the book in their hands and read some of it. And any profits left over are going to go to Birds Canada and the Society of Canadian Ornithologists. Since I last gave this talk, I can now tell you that I've got endorsements on the back cover by these people: Stephen Price, Emeritus President of Birds Canada; Quebec Oiseau, that was a big catch too; Nature Conservancy of Canada was the second last one I got; Society of Canadian Ornithologists were in there first; David Sibley of Field Guides. Everybody knows who David Sibley is. I know he's an American, but I thought it would be neat to have some American endorsement. And then Rick Hansen, Man in Motion, his foundation is also endorsing the book. And so we're planning to use the website to get more endorsements from organizations and well-known Canadians across Canada, as well as signatures on a petition or two. You see, there's another petition out there. It's one by the House of Parliament, but they only keep it up for 120 days. And so I don't want to have it done and for just basically 3 months and then, or 4 months, and then have it shut down. So I'm going to wait a little bit for that particular one when we get this book out. And then Senator Diane Griffin is very interested in this project, and she's willing to put forth a Senate motion or inquiry once the book is out in the coming winter, and something to do with basically getting it on the federal floor and some attention. Now, COVID has been complicating our efforts, of course. We haven't been able to get together with people and so on and do things the way we'd like. I mean, even I can't even see your friendly faces in person because of it. And so we're shooting for July 1st, 2022, but there's been a fly in the ointment, which you all know. There's an election happening in this month. And basically, I don't know who we should root for in this one. I don't want to get involved in politics and so on, because everybody has their own points of view who should be in there for various reasons, a lot more important than a national bird. But I have to say that I know the Liberals, their main thing is the target is going to be arts, culture, and tourism. And when I read that on the CTV News a few weeks ago, I thought, oh my God, that might be really good. So perhaps a Liberal government, a majority government, I know would make it even easier, because then it'd say, okay, we got our 4 years now, we can do what we want. What about that national bird issue? I worry a bit about the NDP. I'm not worried because Dick Cannings is an NDP guy, and he's on Team Canada J. He's all for this bird and so on. I worry a little bit about the Conservatives, because I remember the Harper days, and I know they did some good things, but I also know that they muzzled scientists, and they weren't very big on boreal forest preservation and so on, and also climate warming. So they're not going to want to create a national symbol as a poster child for those things. I don't think. Maybe Aaron O'Toole is a different guy. I don't know. I don't know him very well. But what may happen is we may end up getting sort of a three-way race, and with two parties having to get together. So that might work in our favor too. So here's what Canadians can do. First of all, when the book comes out, buy it, give it to your friends, and even better, give it to your local federal member of parliament and any influential folks you might know, celebrities or anybody like that. Contact your local federal member of parliament by email, telephone, or even better, in person, and let them know that you'd like to see the Canada Jay recognized as our national bird as soon as possible, with some obvious consideration of COVID. That's much more important, and our economy, of course. Go to your nearest boreal forest, whether it's a national park, provincial park, ski mountain, seek out the bird and see how beautiful and friendly they are, and appreciate the magnificent habitat they live in. Introduce your kids and your grandkids, or any kids for that matter, to the Canada Jay, and don't forget to bring along your camera for a photograph they'll never forget. I've got a 14-year-old grandson here, and I had him up on Mount Fernie just the other day, and I had my phone ready and some kibble, but unfortunately I couldn't see any birds around, but he's actually interested in birds. What a great photograph that would make. Make a donation to your favorite local, national, or international organization that's committed to saving Canada's boreal forest, conserving our birds, protecting our parks, and fighting climate warming. All of those things will help Canada Jays. And if you're lucky enough to have them coming into your backyard feeders, make sure they're clean, filled with fresh food, and safe from window strikes and predation by cats, hawks, and owls. And then visit the Canada Jay website to sign that petition. And if you're any kind of a celebrity or an influential person, please maybe provide an endorsement quote. You can send it to me so I can put it on the website. And if you're a member of a stakeholder organization with any kind of strong roots in Canada, it doesn't have to be nature related. Convince your organization. It could be the National Miners Association, if that exists, or some forestry thing, or any kind of Canadian-wide organization. Get them to write a letter of endorsement, because the federal government will pay more attention to them than they will for nature guys, because we're biased. And so please do that. And then use your local print and electronic media in whatever way you can. Write letters to the newspapers, phone calls to radio stations, articles in magazines, blog, podcasts, social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, to promote the bird. Hashtags there are Canada Jay and National Bird. And if you are a federal politician, I know there's nobody in the audience listening to this, you got better things to do. Whether you're serving the ruling party or not, do everything in your power to make this bird the most Canadian bird, our newest national symbol. Last little sidebar here. I get asked this sometime: is feeding Canada Jays a bad idea? Well, I put this question to Dan Strickland, who knows more about these birds than anybody. And these are his feelings, and I totally agree with him. It is a very pleasurable campsite and trailside activity, and it helps inspire love for nature, especially among children. The little kids that were at that campground that I passed on the way here were really interested in these birds. And experiments in Algonquin Park by Dan Strickland and students and so on showed that winter food supplements from these handouts actually lead to more and healthier nestlings. These things normally subsist on semi-rotten, bacteria-ridden bits of raw vertebrate flesh and insect spiders, berries, and fungi in various stages of decay. So don't tell me that the odd handout of cheese, raisins, or dog kibble is going to harm these birds. It's basically become part of this bird's ecology. And lastly, I just wanted to point out this beautiful painting that was done specifically for the book by Barry Kent Mackay. I happen to own the original, I'm proud to say, as a gift from my wife. And Dan Strickland has actually corrected anything that was wrong in it. I'm very proud to own it. And this is just the acknowledgments of various people. I won't go through these and so on, because I'm eager to hear your opinions. Thank you very much. Merci.
Excellent.
Thank you, David.
That was wonderful.
I gotta get back here, you guys. I gotta find you guys again here.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to.
Where are we here? Stop share. Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go.
There
Okay.
we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
David, wasn't there also some to do about the Audubon Association adopting the American spelling of gray versus the Canadian spelling?
Oh, yes. It's funny you should say that, because that galled Dan Strickland more than anything, because he's really, I mean, it was an amazing thing that he did, to get the American ornithology. It's now called the something, Anne will probably know, but something checklist committee or whatever. It's being renamed or whatever, but to get them to admit that a mistake was made and change a bird's name back was quite a feat, really. And that American spelling was very galling to Dan, but we didn't play that card very much.
Okay.
So does anybody out there disagree with this bird as a Canadian bird? I'd be eager to hear if you could find something that's better.
No, it's a lot of fun too. If you have,
Yes.
I was up Cypress Park and sitting on a log having lunch, and I was just talking, not paying attention. I had a muffin in my hand, and I was just sort of sitting like this, right? Blah, 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 blah. The whole muffin, the bird.
You just went mute. Are you swearing a lot right now? Are you using cuss words? Is that why they muted you?
No.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, the bird took the whole muffin.
Oh, wow.
I thought, they don't weigh very much. How much does a Canada Jay weigh?
Oh, wow. Let me think about that now. An American kestrel weighs about roughly, the males being smaller than the females, roughly about 120 grams. I would imagine a Canada Jay. See, I still make little mistakes now and then. Canada Jay probably weighs somewhere around that 100, 120 grams. Not much. I mean, yeah, that's an amazing feat for it to carry away a whole muffin and so on. And, I know you can say, well, what a terrible thing that is that bird did to you, but I just think it's cheeky, and I like it. It's part of their character.
I personally, I thought it was hilarious. And everybody who was watching, because I've got my back turned basically like this.
Yes.
And everybody who was watching just burst out laughing.
Oh.
It's great.
I would have loved to have had a photograph of that.
I see somebody's put a comment up here on the chat thing. Joe Stevenson saying it was a fantastic presentation.
Yeah, I saw that. I can see Joe's comment.
Yeah.
Thank you very much,
And
Joe.
Jack McDonald, you had a comment way back near the beginning of David's presentation. It was on one of the slides with a date on, I think about the change of name.
Yeah, no, not the change of names, the flag. Canada flag is 1965, not 75.
Is that right? Have I got that year wrong?
You do have it wrong.
I've given this talk several times, and I got the information from Wikipedia. I thought it was 1975. I'll have to change that. Thank you very much for pointing that out. You're a sharp guy, because no one else has picked up on that. And I've given it about a half a dozen times now. In fact, all across Canada, the Canadian Wildlife Federation, and also to the Royal Canadian Geographical Society, and no one picked up on
No
it.
one's picked up on it.
I'll change
Lester
it.
Pearson, Lester
Yes.
Pearson, 1965.
Are you a bit of a history buff? Is that why you picked up
No,
on it?
no, I just stickler for detail.
Oh, good for you. Well, I like to be too. And you know something, Dan Strickland, he's also heard this talk, and I'm surprised he didn't pick up because he's a big stickler for detail.
There you go.
That's actually amusing to me. I think it was a typo, actually. No, I'm just kidding.
What's the closest habitat you might find them?
Well, to where though? I mean, the closest habitat from here, as I could go literally a 10-minute drive and be right in their habitat. But where you're living in, you guys are in the Delta area, right? You'd have to go, I think, well, I don't know about places like Grouse Mountain and so on. Has any of you guys been up there? Is Anne still there? She's a great bird watcher. Have you been up to
Seymour, Grouse, Cypress Bowl, all those areas, you can run into them.
Oh, that's good. That would be your best bet then, unless you wanted to take a ferry and go to Mount Washington, where I know you'll get to see them.
Yeah, the North Shore Mountains and Manning Park too. It's another place.
Yes, well, Manning Park is that's there. I was actually delighted when I had that car trouble. I mean, it was a mixed blessing because I got to see these birds again, and I haven't seen them here yet. But I'm going up in the logging roads in a couple of days, and birding with a couple other guys. But we're not going to the higher altitudes, and that's what they like.
Mhm.
Good to see you again, Anne. And
Yeah, nice to see you.
I'm
Yeah.
surprised about all that great report you gave and all the hard work you're doing and all the accolades you got. I know you when we were served together on Birds Canada on the board, and my God, you always were just a really hardworking person with a lot of smart things to say. So the Delta Nats are lucky to have you as a member, an active member. In my book.
Oh, thanks, David. I miss Birds Canada on the board. That was
Yeah, I
fun.
do too.
Except for the drive from Toronto Airport down to the office every time. Oh,
Yes.
I don't miss the drive, but
No.
I miss the company. Yeah, it used
Yes,
to be
it's-
fun.
Yeah.
Watching that prothonotary warbler.
Yes, I got to see that too. That was really something.
So you can see those things up there on that chat.
Yes, I'm getting them,
Yeah.
and so thank you very much for your
Because
compliments.
people-
It's a very easy talk for me to give because I'm very passionate about it, and I'm not alone. It's not just me doing it. I've got a huge team of great people and so on. I'm lucky to have Dan. He keeps my feet on the ground whenever I try to do something that doesn't make that's not right or whatever. And so he obviously missed the year that the Canadian flag was born, but that's all right. I forgive him.
Yeah, I'm looking
So
forward to.
I think we've recorded this, haven't we, Jim
Yes.
and others? Because usually there's more people at the meeting, but I
Yeah.
know for a fact that a lot of people are still away on holiday and so on. So
Yes.
taking advantage of
Okay.
the fine weather and things. So yeah, the rest of the membership can watch it on the recording. Yeah.
Okay, I in most of my talks, I generally don't like them recorded because if I do that and everybody gets to see them on YouTube, then especially with this Zoom thing we're doing now, and who knows when we're going to be getting away from those. If all my talks get out there on YouTube and everything else and so on, then I don't have anything. I'm not going to get very many people attending my Zoom talks and so on. But this one in particular, the more people that see it, the better. So I have no problem with it. And I think I told you that from the beginning.
Yeah, well, that's good to know because I've never had a speaker say that they didn't want something recorded.
No.
But I didn't even think to ask you. We post it on our Delta Naturalists website,
Okay.
but that is open to the public as well.
Yeah.
It's not just to members. So
Right. Yeah. Anyway, this talk is great for that. I have no problem with it.
okay,
More
good.
people see it, the better. Yeah.
We'll remind everybody who didn't come tonight because I know there were a number of people who were still away.
Yep.
Otherwise, I'm sure they would have been here because I know everybody enjoyed your last talk very much, and this one was certainly every bit as enjoyable.
Tell me something. There was a man at that talk. I think he may have introduced me. I've only met him once or twice. Am I thinking of the right guy? He passed away.
Tom Burst, yes.
I was so sad to hear that news when he was one of those kind of guys that, and I think I may even said this in an email to whoever told me that he was sort of bigger than life kind of thing. He was, he had a big booming voice, got the attention of everybody in a room. And I identify with people like that. And I was so sad to hear that he passed away. That's a big loss, I think.
Oh, it's a huge loss to us, I'm telling you, both because he was our president, but also because he was a friend.
Yes.
It was a very, very difficult time for everyone when Tom passed away. And as you can see, we've had 2 co-presidents filling his shoes.
Yes, I can see. Yeah.
We couldn't find one. We couldn't find one person who was willing to even give it a try.
Yeah.
But it's worked out very well with our 2 co-presidents. Though I'm afraid we're losing Audrey, but for a very good reason. She's getting married later in the month.
I hope, did I misread things at all? Is your membership really suffering, or is it just that people haven't paid up?
It's just that people haven't paid up.
Oh, okay, I was a little bit worried. I heard about the memberships are at half, and I thought, my God,
No,
what's the bird protection in Quebec, which I was involved with for many years back in Montreal, has always been suffering from a dwindling membership, especially for young people or whatever. But I thought, my God, you guys, have you gone down to your memberships have? That's not good news at all for nature. But
it's only just come due, David, the money. I haven't paid mine yet.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're just slow to get to our bank accounts and do the transaction. Yeah, it comes due at this time of year in time for the AGM. Yeah.
Happy to do that, or happy to hear that, actually.
Yeah, we get a lot of people actually paying in December when Jim sends out the notice saying, you've got to pay now.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's when the last people will pay up. But we actually acquired new members.
Oh, good.
So I think that it's just a matter of people not putting their hands in their pockets yet.
All right.
A little bit slow.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
Yeah.
David, curious about plans for distribution of the book?
Yeah, we haven't quite got there yet. We're actually, right now, we're having trouble getting a printing press to give me the kind of quality that I want to have for the cost that we want to pay. We don't want to go with poor quality paper, and we don't want to go with a printing press in China or even the United States. We want a Canadian printing press because it's a Canadian bird thing. And there is a company in Quebec. The name escapes me right now, but it's I've seen their name on a lot of French books, even a book that I was involved with. And they actually have what's called bird-friendly paper. It's a bit more expensive, but the problem is because of COVID, all of these companies are all backlogged because they weren't able to have employees come in and do printing runs, and they're all backlogged. And so for a book that I was hoping to have out by, initially I announced March, and then I announced, in time for Canada Day, and they've all come and gone. And now we were trying to think of a special day in the fall, like International Migratory Birds Day, except that that's mainly for Mexican and Latin American birds. So I learned on the internet. Plus, it's the Canada jay is not a migratory bird. Although I could play the card with the media saying, "Hey, not all birds are going to migrate. We have a tough Canadian bird that's not." So I have that. I would do that if I thought it was right. But my co-authors, well, the bottom line is we're not going to have the book out in time for that anyway. So we're now looking at probably December print run or something. And we've Dan Strickland has been publishing books out of Algonquin Park for years, and he's got a printing company there that does really high quality books for like $4.95 with lots of color pictures in them and so on, about the same size as ours. So we might go with them, or maybe get, I'm going to see if I can get Hancock to partner with them somehow, either maybe for the second print run or something. But I really want this book to be a cheap book so that anybody can get it really easily for not much money. And so I really can't tell you that. One author suggested that we waited next spring, but gee whiz, I don't know if we can wait that long. The book is done. It's a gorgeous book. We've had a lot of compliments on from book designers that have seen it from other publishing companies, and they would like to be part of it. But Jim's got a question, I think. He's got his hand up.
Yes. Have you considered getting a PDF copy available online?
Yeah, going to do that for sure. In fact, I could send you a PDF copy, except that I really want to try to go with this hard copy first and get that out there with the media, and then we'll definitely do a PDF copy. We'll probably put it on the website, to be honest with you. But the distribution thing, as the gentleman just before you pointed out, is the key. You see, the thing is, if we go to places like Chapters and the Amazon and so on, they're not going to sell the book unless they can make some money with it. So if we, if the book's only $4.95 and they're not going to make anything out of it, they're not going to distribute the book. And so what we're going to have to do then is rely on Canadians. I've got a lot of groups like Brome Bird Care that make the Squirrel Buster feeders. They want to sell the book. I've got people champing at the bit to write reviews of the book. So I think it's going to get out there. I mean, you can trust me. I'm going to make sure that people know about it.
Yeah,
Any other questions?
I was just reading your column in the latest Canadian Wildlife magazine.
Mhm.
And I noticed that there's another pandemic in the bird world, but south of the border only so far.
Well, fortunately, I have good news for you. That pandemic seems to have dwindled out. There are some scientists have been trying to connect it to a cicada outbreak, in that a lot of birds were eating those cicadas big time because they were so readily available. There was something in them that was causing this neurological behavior. They haven't made a direct connection yet. I haven't seen a scientific paper out on it yet. But Brome Bird Care, for example, was quite concerned because they don't want people to stop bird feeding for obvious reasons and so on. And I actually wrote a statement saying, look, keep your feeders clean. You don't have to do it unless unless the epidemic is in your area and so on. But then it died out, and so that was it. So, but there are going to be more pandemics. Believe me. There was the head drooping one over in that nailed all the vultures over in Pakistan, India, and those African countries over there, and they're still trying to recover. That was caused by a chemical, of course, but it's still a pandemic anyway.
Yeah, well, it's good to know that it's not something that's heading our way.
No, it's good. It's all good. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, all of our members were well aware of what was happening with the
Yes, I
salmonella
know.
one, and
Yeah.
making sure that they keep their feeders clean and
Yeah.
that thing. So, okay, anybody have any questions? No? Jim?
Is the PDF copy available now?
Well, I would rather not make it available right now until we get the hard copy done. So I'm loath to send it out. I've sent it out to a very, very, very few people. Only people that can help me, give me some advice on how to publish it or whatever. So I'm not going to play that card just yet.
Okay.
David, I have a comment. Have you tried any of the printers in Manitoba? Because I understand the printers in Manitoba are doing some pretty good quality printing at pretty reasonable prices.
Okay. Haven't yet, but I'll tell you what, my email address is very simple. It's david.bird@McGill, the university I taught at, .ca for Canada. david.bird@mcgill.ca. If you could, David, send me that comment, just send it to me. That way I'll use that. Remember to say that to Miles Lamont and Dan Strickland when we're having our conversation when I get back home.
Okay.
I didn't know that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The person who we found that out from is Howard White with Harbor Publishing.
Okay.
So he might also be the kind of person who's interested in Canadian projects, and it may be worth a call.
Yeah, no, please send that information to me.
Yeah, okay.
I just in case you're interested, besides the CanadaJ.org website, I have my own website that's out there called, it's www. and then it's askprofessorbird, all one word, .com. And I put, past all the columns and things I write and so on. And there's just tons of information on there to help people. But the column is mainly there for people to send questions to me or problems or whatever. And so far to date, I've answered every one. I haven't got to the point where I'm overwhelmed because I'm also doing podcasts. And here's another thing for you might want to think about is that Brome Bird Care has a bi-weekly, that's every 2 weeks, they produce a podcast TV show about birds. And I am their scientific authority. So I do a 2-minute response to any questions that get sent into them, plus a 2-minute report on what's happening with birds around the world. Some new discovery or some new epidemic or whatever. And that's free. You can just go there. All you have to do is type in or Google Brome Bird News or Brome Bird Care, and you'll get there. And you can all see all the archive ones as well. And they're cute little shows. Tatiana Thompson is the hostess, and she's really quite, she's an attractive lady, and she's very vivacious and so on, and does a nice job. And then yours truly is there as well, doing my stand-up little interviews. So that's out there for you as well.
Yeah, I think most of that information is included in the biography that
Oh,
Audrey's
it
got in the
probably is.
newsletter.
It is, I'm sure it is, yes.
I know
Thank you.
the website's certainly in there, but I think also the other thing too. So I think everybody can probably find that pretty easily.
One last thing that you might want to know is that all those books, there's 4 books: Birds of Canada, Birds of Eastern Canada, Birds of Western Canada, and my favorite, Pocket Birds of Canada, were all produced by DK Canada, Dorning Kindersley, I think it's called. Well, that company is now being gobbled up by Penguin / Random House in Toronto. They're now part of that, and they're not doing those books anymore. And that really bothered me because I think they're really good books. And I don't mean I'm connected as a consultant editor, but I certainly didn't create the books from beginning to end, like Sibley does, for example. But the point is that I contacted DK US to see, well, what's going to happen to these books. And they put me in touch with DK London, which is the parent company, and they've assured me that they're going to do more editions of those 4 books. But probably what's holding things up now is and I don't want to get into this as a whole other talk coming up someday in the future, is this movement to change birds' names. And I don't really want to get into it right now because it's very controversial. But the problem with that is, of course, that's going to make all publishing companies think, gee, do we really want to do a new edition right now? If they're going to come up with all these new bird names for birds, it's going to make the books literally dinosaurs as soon as they come out. And that is, I've already told them that's a possibility. So until that gets resolved, I'm not sure you're going to see any new editions of any of the field guides and bird books coming out soon.
That's
Comment. Oh,
Go ahead.
I think that your prices are way too low. You can't even buy a bookmark for $4.95. You should at least make it $9.95.
Well, that's true. And I'm not saying it will be sold for $4.95, except that those beautiful color books out of Algonquin Park are $4.95. But I don't get me wrong. I'll be surprised. I think we were looking actually at $14.95, something like keeping it under $15 or whatever. But as I said, Hancock is not making a profit. None of the contributors, writers, photographers, painters are making a profit. And so basically we want to get it in the hands of as many Canadians as possible, particularly in the hands of federal politicians. And I'm waiting to see who we're going to be dealing with. And when that book is available, as soon as it's available, we are going to be mailing copies at the cost of $12 a piece to whoever is the federal leader and the various ministers we think are the ones to target. And then I'll also be
handing them
out. What's that?
You think they can read?
Well, you know something, in most cases, they'll probably take the book and one of their aides will show it, say, oh, you got this in the mail, and they'll hold that, look at it, and then put it down somewhere. But you never know. I really don't know what else we can do besides the website. And I think that an approaching Canada Day might catch a government in the right mood for doing this. But I think we need a little bit more time to pass since that contest in 2015. But the book is such a convincing argument. I've encapsulated it in my talk, but it's very attractive looking. And anybody even reading a little bit of it, even the endorsements on the back would how could you say no?
I've
Well,
tried
we should hope-
personally delivering a book to a politician, but that doesn't necessarily mean they'll read it either.
No, well, you know something? The current Minister of Environment and Climate Affairs is a fellow, he's in Vancouver writing, is he not? Jonathan, I don't know his last name, you know him. Yeah. Well, my plan was, if Cohen wasn't there, if I had that book in my hands, I'm planning to go and meet him personally and talk to him about the book. I went to see Elizabeth May, who's my current MP, and it took me 5 minutes to convince her, but that's Elizabeth May, mind you. And she didn't even know about gray jay or Canada jays at the time. So it was called the gray jay then, and she didn't even know about them. And bingo.
Oh,
Yeah, she probably did. To be fair to her, she probably knew about them, but
You
she
should have
didn't
a
know. There was a
protest
group.
march.
Pardon me?
You should have a protest march in front of the
Well, you know something? It's funny you should mention that. I actually talked to David Johnston when he was the Governor General. I used to play hockey with him. And so we know each other. He was the head of my university at McGill for many years. He was the greatest boss, ultimate boss I could ever have. And I got advice from him on how to proceed with this whole process to get this bird ratified by the federal government. And he told me that having some sort of a march or something in Ottawa won't do anything at all. He said that if you got a petition, it's got to have at least 100,000 names or they won't pay attention to it. And he said that basically, right now, the best thing you can do is to try and get at individual politicians. And so, when we had the contest going on, you'll get a kick out of this. When we had the contest going on, the Royal Canadian Geographical Society ran a national debate in person in Ottawa and invited Catherine, another senior moment. She was then the Minister for Environment and Climate Change. And we remember who she was? A nice, attractive blonde lady.
Name McKenna.
Yes, Catherine McKenna. And she was there at the debate sitting in the front row. First, she went up and made some remarks. Everybody thought she was going to leave, as like ministers do, give a few remarks and then leave. She stayed for the whole thing. And I overheard her telling somebody that she wanted to stay and hear the arguments for whatever bird it might be, because she thought we were going to be debating it in the House of Parliament. That got me excited. And anyway, I had no intention of spoofing any of the other four candidates. What they did is they had, poor Stephen Price had the stump for the common, he had good arguments for the common loon. And then there's some poor guy who was our poet laureate of Canada, had to do the Canada goose. And they never took the thing seriously, but I did. I went there with all my homework, and just like you heard me tonight. And I pulled out two flags, one of Ontario and one of Quebec. And I used that argument. I said, when we chose our flag in 1965, we didn't elevate this one. We didn't elevate this one. We chose this one, something fresh and new. And we should do the same thing with a national bird. And I got a huge applause from that. And even people who were going to vote for another bird switched their minds right there in that meeting. And so I just need to get together with these politicians. I came so close to Melanie. Remember Melanie? She's still a minister today. She was the Minister of Heritage. That's the minister that we got to convince. Melanie Joly, okay, a Quebec lady. And a friend of mine who knows her very well and has a cottage right beside her was going to arrange for me to meet with her in person to make my arguments. And then the Netflix affair hit. You know, the Netflix affair where she got a lot of hot water, actually lost her ministry over it, her ministerial position over it. And I lost the chance to talk to her. And and right now with COVID going on, there's no way I'm going to push for a national bird, such a frivolous thing when people are dying of COVID and being financially ruined. Are you kidding me? So that's why we're backing off. It might even be Canada Day 2023 or whatever. We'll see. But there will be this, I'm just not sure who to hope for in this election. I feel a little bit better with the Liberals myself, only because I seem to enjoy life better and they seem to be more environmentally interested. But anyway. So anyway, I hope I've convinced you to think my way, and anything you can do. I've given you lots of suggestions. They're there. When you look at the talk, wherever it is, you can look at them and helps out. Buy the book when it comes available. You'll hear about it for sure. I guarantee you.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be selling copies at any talk I give for sure.
Yeah, well, that's great. It was a really, really good talk. And I think you've convinced all of us. And I'm sure you'll get a few signatures on your petition from this. And once people have a chance to see the recording, I'm sure you'll get some more.
Yes, thank you very much.
And I'm sure a lot of people will buy the book too.
Yeah.
Okay,
well, you all take care of yourselves. And I hope you get those errant members all paying up, especially that Anne Murray. And I look forward to seeing you guys in person sometime. But I've got several other talks. I've got one another one called Why Birds Matter. You got a little bit of that at the beginning when I say why we need a national bird. And I got a new one called Attracting Birds, not just bird feeding, Beyond the Basics. And it's a Q&A, lots of visuals and so on, but I'm tackling questions that a lot of people don't think about. For example, why do blue jays eat paint flakes? What colors can birds see? Do they care about the color of their feeders? All sorts of things. Should we have heated bird baths in the wintertime? I tackle all those questions in that talk. That'd be a good one for you sometime.
Well, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, we're certainly look forward to having you back again.
All right. Take care of you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Bird.
You're very welcome, guys.
Aren't you going to give him the poster?
What?
I'm going to try to give him the poster. Actually, he hasn't given me his address yet, his snail mail address, but I do have a copy of the poster.
Yes, you will send me an email and I'll answer your question.
And
I thought I had given you my maybe it was I'm giving another talk to the other guys.
Quite right, very naturalists, yeah.
Yeah, on another talk that I have called Watching Birds Naked, which has nothing to do with sex, by the way. It's sensory ecology and so on. They wanted to hear that talk. So anyway, I look forward to talking to you guys for years to come. I have no intention of giving this stuff up. So
we'll be glad to have you back for sure.
I look forward to going birding with you someday, sometime.
That would be nice.
Take care, guys.
Much appreciated.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks
bye-bye.
again.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. And I guess this adjourns our meeting.